Welcome to another episode of the Trusted Advisor podcast and video series powered by the Retail Solutions Providers Association. Our goal on the pod is to accelerate the success of today's and tomorrow's leaders in the retail IT industry. I'm Jim Roddy, back with you again. Thank you so much for joining us. Now, this is a special episode of the pod where we're going to cover two important topics. So leadership is going to be one topic for sure. That's been our theme all year. But first, we're going to preview a RetailNOW 2024 breakout session. If you're not familiar with RetailNOW, it's the Retail IT Channel's #1 trade show, education conference, and networking event scheduled for July 28th through 30th at the Paris Hotel in Las Vegas. RetailNOW will feature 5 education tracks and more than 20 education sessions, including the one we'll discuss today: dynamic leadership, igniting growth, navigating change, and empowering teams. Now, that session is part of the Express education track, where 3 executives are going to share their insights in 10-minute segments, followed by an audience Q&A. And our guest today will present at the show about how to free up your time for visionary leadership. Please welcome back to the RSPA Trusted Advisor podcast, Kevin Spencer, the president of VAR Rod Plus Solutions. Hey, Kevin, great to talk with you again.
Oh, it's fantastic. Thank you so much for the invitation. I really appreciate it. It's one of my favorite times.
Happy to do this. Always happy to cross paths with you, either at a show or like we're doing here on a podcast. This will be the 3rd time we do a podcast interview. So it's the 2nd time here on the RSPA podcast. So longtime listeners will remember Kevin from episode 30, where he shared his incredible story about growing his company during the COVID-19 pandemic. And I think the short version of the story is you're from Trinidad, you're at a conference in Florida, your family couldn't leave because of the pandemic, and you decided to start a business in the United States. So can you tell us about your organization today? Are you a VAR? Are you still a VAR? How many employees do you have? Where your office is located, the geographies you serve, vertical markets, things of that nature?
Oh, great. From a business model perspective, we have transcended to what we would call innovators. So we're innovating with any solution that we have. I mean, we're coming up with things that customers and clients want to see in the industry. I mean, we've grown to 20 employees. My location is in Trinidad and Tobago and now Miami. And the geographies we represent would be, the English-speaking Caribbean, Puerto Rico, Florida, and some aspects of Latin America.
Fabulous. Okay, and then vertical markets. What are your focus areas there?
Retail, hospitality, retail in the sense of core would be supermarkets, liquor stores, generalized retail, restaurants, focus mainly on those general things, and then some level of distribution companies who are looking for mobility.
Excellent. And I'm just curious, how much time do you now spend in Florida? How much time do you spend in Trinidad and Tobago?
To be honest with you, I have not been back to Trinidad since January. Was my last visit there. I mean, then there was Carnival, and it's just being busy here and trying to get the Miami office settled has been my main focus. I mean, I do owe them a visit, so hopefully next month. But I like to go probably once a month just to, align with my people.
Got it. Understand. When we're recording this in late May, and so folks will be listening to this in June. So you've been back there in almost 6 months. So
that's
correct. And I'm sure what's going to tie in. Well, I want to talk about visionary leadership. I'm sure it's going to lead to delegation to some degree. But let's first talk. As your presentation at RetailNOW is going to be on visionary leadership. What does that phrase visionary leadership mean to you? And then how has embracing it impacted your business?
I like to put that in one word. We talk about looking at things from 10,000 feet, the eagle, right? And, when you position yourself away to the point that you can see things happening and not for you to get involved, but to see where you need to steer things, as an eagle would when they're looking up from way up high. It's really positioning that focus and getting the thoughts flowing and say, oh, we need to do this. This aligns with my vision. This, even getting my managers to see, all right, this is what we need to align with my vision, and for us as an organization to push forward in terms of everything to do with our customers, keeping our customers happy, and balancing, playing the balancing act of doing that has been great from my being.
Great. And so can you talk about like what is the vision for the company? I know there was a time where, when we first talked, you had a vision of expanding in the United States. Can you talk about the vision for your organization right now, whatever you're willing to share publicly?
Uh, from that perspective, I would say, just continue being, our biggest customers want that innovation. So whatever we can do in terms of being an innovator, and anybody we position our products to, we position ourselves as an innovator first. And, when you get close or align with a customer's, even aligning with customers' vision, where they want to go and where we need to go with them, that kind of positions us in a better place. I mean, from the growth perspective, I believe we've done, and we're taking this bit by bit. So Puerto Rico has been great for us in terms of customers who are looking for that innovation from hardware solution perspective, and other things that we do that, are not really even that public on our website, but we have been able to consult and provide customers with that ease of pushing forward into the next 5 to 10 years in terms of where technology is going. And we spoke about, what and it's as big as, self-checkouts and things like that. That's been a big deal for us in the Caribbean. And, that rocket that is pushing off when it comes to self-service. And, people are saying, the big guns are pulling back, but the independents are going really hard when it comes to that. So that's been really where our focus has been, on whatever we can evolutionize for the customer's experience. That's what we've been focusing on, and the vision is really pushing forward there.
I like how you phrase that. I'm like when we're recording this, we're 60 days out from retail now. And again, when folks are listening to this, it's going to be a lot closer. So don't be marking down your calendar 60 days from today. Is retail now to our listeners out there? You'll show up in Vegas probably a couple weeks or so late. But I've been thinking about, giving a state of the industry report, and it's hard to grasp onto one thing. Like you said, self-checkout, in some pockets it's up, in other pockets it's moving backwards. And then there's AI, but we're like, who's making money off AI? But it really seems to be that innovation. I guess, how did you land on that as your vision? Was it something that you dreamed up in your time off, or was it a combination of compiling everything that you had, been hearing and seeing, in that time of personal contemplation, and put it together as a vision, or is it just a natural progression of what you've been doing?
I think it's a little bit of both, because, we talked about this before. In the pandemic, when everybody else was just scared and didn't know what things were going, I mean, I used that time to sit back and see what would people need, what do people want to do? So when we talked about with one customer, we talked about self-checkout, it's really where you want to have limited connection with people, right? But at the same time, it's a fantastic customer experience, because self-checkouts are not new, right? But it's evolved to the point that now people want to use self-checkouts to create that experience that customers will keep coming back for, whether it's you promoting points or that speed of service that they see now compared to lining up in a queue, whatever, to make that experience the best for you as a retailer. It's what's been powering me through. And if I sit back and the conversation I have with different customers, or the key customers that have pushed forward with self-checkout, it's really about, seeing this without even thinking about the pandemic. It was not there. It was just about, where do you need to go? The pandemic is going to be gone. You need to see where you're going to be in 5 years and forget the pandemic. And that's kind of been the monologue. And some people may not agree with me, but it's a proven methodology now that I can say, I did it, and we're here.
Nice. I'm glad you're glad you're here. Glad you're at this stage. Now, we don't want to spoil your Retail Now talk, so I'm not going to ask you to share every element of it. But can you talk about like one important action that you've taken that has freed up your time as a leader, so you can, embrace visionary leadership? What's one action you've taken?
I would say you trust the people that report to you. So my leadership team, there's a great element of trust, because when you give them trust and they are able to now excel, then you don't have to be as involved in the operations anymore. Because, at the end of the day, you don't want to be, as a business owner, a transactional manager. You want to be able to just, people do their things, they do what they're supposed to do, and then they report to you. And, that should not have you chained to a desk, or chained to a computer all day, every day. So, trust would be the biggest thing that I would give you now, compared to what I have in my presentation for Retail Now.
Okay, and there's the famous Ronald Reagan quote where he was talking about, and I know the analogy is going to break down somewhere, but it was like negotiating with a foreign foe, and it was trust but verify. And so, you have both there. Is that something you do as well in terms of to be able to free yourself up? It's not just blind trust. Are there reports? What things do you do to make sure that it's trustworthy? The data you're getting is trustworthy.
Oh, there's tremendous collaboration. Even though the trust is there, there's tremendous collaboration, there's tremendous guidance, to the point that um, I make sure that they know whatever they did, it's within my vision, within the goals of the organization. So it's not just being blind, but you want to make sure that they also can, even if they make a mistake, you don't want to, come down and beat them with a hammer, but, guide them, this is what I would have done. But, that with that trust, the mistakes wither away, because you want everybody to be a great leader in your organization. So you can free up yourself.
Right. And you mentioned some VARs are chained to their desk. You certainly aren't, right? You travel more than the average reseller. I've seen you at several conferences, whether we cross paths in person or on LinkedIn. You're pretty active on LinkedIn as well. I get to see you at conferences there. So why do you invest time into going to, into travel, to going to events and conferences? Like, how has that positively impacted your business? Like, can you speak to the skeptics who are listening to us going, no, I need to be in my office. That travel, I'm not going to get anything out of going to that conference. How's that positively impacted your business?
I think that's a big misconception that people have, because they say, like, I talk to some business leaders and say, I don't have time for that. I don't know how you do that. But I think networking is your greatest tool in your business. You get aligned with people who do what you do, as well as you get to learn what mistakes they've made. You get to learn what successes they have, you know. And the greatest goal is to be aligned with evolving technology. Technology is going to grow, it's going to change to different places. Um, I want to be there. I want to be present to make sure that I'm not left behind. So, and you can do anything from your phone. You can do anything. You can find free time to even have that meeting. So you can do things remotely that you couldn't do in the past. So I if I have to sum that up in one word, I would say that networking is the greatest thing that you can have in your book. Even if I go back to Inspire, I mean, this year was my first year, but it was an amazing experience that I would go back every year now, because you're around the people that are in the industry, that the important people in this industry are at Inspire, for sure.
Yeah, for those who aren't familiar with Inspire, that's our annual leadership conference, and it was in Puerto Rico this past year. And like Kevin said, it was his first time there. It is resellers, ISVs, plus vendors and distributors, all to the word you brought up earlier about the collaboration, breaking out into small groups, talking about industry challenges. And then we open up the microphone for folks in the audience to share what they've learned from each other and their best practices. I always say, as a show organizer, very nervous when you just have open mic in terms of what's somebody going to say. But the learning, like you said, is unbelievable. And then you get to spend a significant amount of time with a lot of folks who become your friends. And that's, I guess, the whole thing is it's not just that you're attending these events, Kevin, and you're sitting in the back row or you're telling people don't bother me. Or we've even seen some folks now, they take their lanyard and they turn it around so nobody can get their name or scan them. You're super engaged at those events. Am I describing that accurately? Right? You're not just there to hang out for a little bit and go hit the golf course or something. Like you're fully immersed in the event.
Oh yeah, I mean it's big time, and I mean I want people to know who I am because at the end of the day, they might say, "Hey, this I met this guy at this conference, and he's a good guy, and we can work with him in terms of this." I mean, even everywhere I've been in the past, 5, 6 months, I believe that, people are reaching out to me because, hey, they met me somewhere or they want my advice or how did you do this? How do you work with this vendor? I mean, it's just what it is. I mean, networking is a great tool, and then engaging in these things you get to learn. And I think you also have a very mature audience that was at Expire that, it's everybody is just looking to share what they've learned and, transcend into whatever legacies that they want to position themselves for, for their lives.
We had a first-time attendee say a couple years ago, "This conference is awesome. Everybody I talk to, they can answer a question. They're not like, I got to go check with my boss. Like the bosses are here," and some of the aspiring bosses. So I'm glad you had that experience. So before we take a commercial break, so you freed up time to do the visionary leadership, to do the travel and the networking. You've also used it to launch a podcast called Retail Checks and Balances with Kevin Spencer. I'm pleased that I was a guest for episode 6. Thank you so much for having me. Can you talk about why do you invest your time and money and other resources hosting a podcast? How does that fit within the vision that you have for your company?
It's about what I just said, the legacy that I want to leave. I think sharing what I've learned or sharing what we are going to do speaks volumes for itself in the sense that, there's some customers who even reach out to me and say, "Hey, I saw this on your podcast. Can we do this together?" And, it's a really nice marketing to get that. But not only that's not the main reason because it was a hobby of mine. And now that I have the free time, I want to embrace that free time by providing this podcast to let people learn what's been out there, where things are going. And I think it's a good social tool rather than typing something in LinkedIn or Facebook or whatever anybody else uses. They can get good content in just listening to a 30-minute podcast or if 50-minute podcast.
Got it. And that's what it seems like. It's like your exploration, things you've learned or things that you want to learn, and you just do it in a public forum. That kind of seems like is your plan. Excellent. All right. Well, let's pause here to let our listeners and viewers know about the Retail Solution Providers Association. The RSPA is North America's largest community of VARs, software developers, vendors, and distributors in the retail, restaurant, grocery, and cannabis verticals. The RSPA is a perfect fit for any organization that's serious about growth in those markets. We also want to take time to thank our sponsors who support the RSPA community and make this podcast and video series possible. Our platinum sponsor is Blue Star. Our gold sponsors are CoCard, Epson, Heartland, and ScanSource. So to accelerate your success through an RSPA membership or sponsorship, email membership@gorspa.org. Also, we want to make sure to remind you, registration is now open for RetailNOW 2024, the Retail IT Channel's #1 trade show, education, conference, and networking event. As we mentioned before, this year's event is set for July 20th through 30th at the Paris Hotel in Las Vegas. For more information, visit gorspa.org/RetailNOW. RetailNOW is where the industry meets and where you can meet Kevin and me if you want. And we're part of the industry, so we should have been included in that anyway. So, so we've talked about visionary leadership, your company. Talk about your personal leadership journey. So from what I understand, Rod Plus started in 2012. What did you do before that? How did Rod Plus come about?
That's a great question, and respond in the sense that, I was in IT and I moved. It was a local fast food chain, and I learned a lot there. but I wanted something more. So I got into IBM as a data support analyst in terms of helping with the supply chain, working with dealers, and um, then somebody recognized that I've got good opportunities. We had the 9/11 hit, so everybody was scaling down. So I jumped ship and went to this organization that was looking to just embrace retail technology, and I just took from working for that company called, it was called Illuminat. I think that's when I joined RSPA then. And, I that journey from working for somebody and then you have the ideas that they don't want to take, they don't want to take the risk, and I just said, you know what, I've been with you guys for 10 years. It's time for me to do my own thing. And I just took the risk, and we're here 13 years later, and thumbs up.
So talk about that. Was it like once you started working for them, you're like, I want to own my own business someday? Or was it just a progression over time? I was actually just having a conversation like this with a coworker talking about like it's really important to be able to have, not that you have to make all the decisions, but a lot of decision making capability, or else you can get super frustrated in terms of, boy, these people want to go in a different direction than I do. Is that what it was? Was it something you always knew you wanted to be an entrepreneur? Or is it just over time as you grew, you're like, I'd like to be running the show myself?
I think within 5 years of working in that position, I think it dawned upon me that I want to own my own business. I want to be able to do things that that people wouldn't take the risk on, because and you said it specifically. There was some level of frustration because I was advising management to say, all right, we need to do this differently. We need to do this differently, and they didn't listen. And then you're scared because you don't want to go on your own. But I think I got the push at the 10, 11-year mark to say, right, I'm ready to do this on my own. I think I've saved enough money from my commissions to really push forward with something that I can own.
And if you don't mind me asking, was it an internal push? Was it somebody else pushing you and guiding you, somebody encouraging you to do it? What made you make it? What, like, there's that point of where people say, I'm going to go out on my own and be an entrepreneur. And then they're like, ooh, like when the moment comes, a lot of people are like, maybe not so much.
I would say it would be 2 points. It wasn't until a push, but there was always my dad, who has passed away now, who really said, you would be a great leader one day, and you need to keep working as hard as you do, and you'll get there. So it was those two things that really pushed me to move on.
God, I can say from talking to a lot of successful people, either through this podcast or one-on-one interviews, or a book that I recently published called The Walk-On Method to Career and Business Success. Encouragement is almost part of every single person's success story, right? Because like you saying scared, I was thinking to myself, should I ask Kevin if he was scared or not? I'm thinking, no, Kevin's bold. Kevin's like, I'm going to do this. I can take this on. I can tackle anything. But you mentioned that you were scared. I guess, can you talk about the power of encouragement, both that you've received and also that you give? Because that's something I guess I didn't realize quite as much maybe until, I wrote the book, and it was like every story had some, I was ready to quit. And then, my dad or a coach or a roommate or, some friend of mine put their arm around me and said, no, I really have faith in you. And that made all the difference in the world. Can you talk about the role of encouragement and I guess how you apply that today?
I would say, to be honest with you, as you asked that question, it really sparked my memory. There was two inspiring moments that I had. I actually got to meet the great Jack Welch at
Okay.
a conference. I think it was in Orlando. Yeah, it was in Orlando. And I got 10 minutes with him. Everybody was getting 10 minutes with him to have a discussion, and he was asking questions. And he told me, you need to lead an organization. And that was very inspiring for me. The other guy I met would have been Steve Wozniak at that
Hmm.
same at the same conference.
From Apple.
And
Yep.
everybody, I didn't even know who he was until I met him. Because they said, he's the other half of Apple, but you heard of Steve Jobs. And he sat there and he said, one of the things he loved about working for Apple is that Steve was the face, Jobs was his face, but I was the guy who got the technology done. And he said, and this conference was really about leadership. So it's really about you wanted to take that next step. So, having those two people who are great leaders that anybody can put on paper today was kind of my inspiration to push me. From every time I got scared and I remember those words in my head and I remember my dad's words, I said, you know what, I can do this. And, you know, it's amazing that, once you keep that with you, it really, really pushes you forward to where you want to be.
Amen. I'm glad you brought up Jack Welch. I go so far back with Jack Welch. So he had a podcast, might have been called The Welch Way, is what it was. But it was so old school. This is like pre-smartphones. A friend of mine would burn them onto CDs and give me the CDs to listen to when I drove around in my car. But with Jack Welch, I'm curious if you had the same experience. He took, like, when you look at him, he's like some titan of industry, and the late great Jack Welch. But he narrowed it down to very common sense block and tackle. It's not that complicated. I remember his wife Susie, would bring ideas to him, and he'd be like, come on, Susie, it's not that complicated. It's pretty simple. You determine, like, you put these people in 4 quadrants, and you stick with these people. You teach these people. You get rid of these people. He made it so straightforward that I guess it gave me the confidence to say, like, yeah, this doesn't have anything to do with an MBA or some higher level thing. He made it very, very straightforward and tangible. I don't know if you had that same experience with him.
Oh yeah, it was a great experience. I mean, just him saying what he did, and even one of the books you recommended to me, which would be the 4 E's of leadership. I mean, that
Yes.
was an amazing read that really positioned me, and I follow those E's today as any good leader should, and anybody should read that book. I thank you for recommending that book because, I read a couple of his books, but that was one of the biggest inspiring moments of my life, I would say, by reading that book.
Yeah, that book is very accessible, very tangible, and he just runs the 4 E's, right into in all sorts of specifics.
I
So
use it in a handbook sometimes. Sometimes I just go back in to reference something because it's so amazing.
good.
You know.
Wonderful, wonderful. Well, kudos to you. And so that's the recommended read for the day is the 4 E's of Leadership with Jack Welch. So you talked about how Jack Welch, Steve Wozniak, they kind of inspired you to go into business. Can you talk about after you went into business, like maybe those early days of Rod Plus, a learning experience that was super impactful for you as a leader? Like, can you share a story with us that really taught you something that even guides you today?
I would say the first thing would be, everybody talked about having watchwords, right? So one of the things when I started my business it was using the watchwords, we listen to you, and meaning that, the biggest thing that or biggest mistakes that sometimes people make is that they don't want to shut up. They just go in and they want to sell, 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 or say, hey, you need to do this, you need to do this. But sometimes, the greatest things I've done, I mean, my first meeting was a big sale. I didn't even think that this company would have take a chance on me. But it was because of a strong vendor that I aligned with, based on the same thing I was talking about, networking and building that relationship with this vendor. Because they were behind me, because it was just me alone. When I started, it was just me alone. I didn't have anybody else.
Okay.
I rented a small office, and within I left that company, and they called me. They said, "Hey, we heard you left that company, and we want to work with you. You did a great presentation." And I said, "Yeah, I'm on my own now. It's just me. Are you still aligned with that company? Because that's who we want to work with, and we want to work with you." And the guy said, we don't care that you're a one-man show at this point, but we know if you can position what you say you are passionate about, because I was very passionate about helping. And that vendor actually is still a vendor that we use today. I mean,
Oh, yeah.
It's Micronics if you want me to say it, but
Sure.
yeah,
Hey,
member
as long as
anyway.
it's an RSPA member, we'll give you the
Yeah,
green
they're
light to mention
RSP.
them.
Remember Micronics, they positioned me to this deal. It was a 300 printer deal. It was big for me, right? And just working with that customer and listening to what they need, and then talking to Star and providing that good communication and sticking to it, and it just that's what we're about: listening, communicating, and people will follow you because of that. And after we won that deal, I said, okay, I got some money in the bank. I can hire a receptionist. I can hire an account person, and we were three-man team just like that within 3-4 months. And that's one of the things I can say that I've been able to push forward with it. When you see growth, you gotta keep growing. Some people don't grow, they just stay with one or two people and they think it's enough, but you got to grow if you want to release that time that you need.
Got it. Yeah, you can't be standing still especially in this industry because things are. I think
Exactly.
that would be a Jack Welch quote, right? If the rate of change outside of the bus, outside is moving faster than you are, the end is near. I think that might actually be.
It is. It sounds familiar, so I guess it is. And I trust you.
Sure. And I was going to, our listeners can let us know. No, that wasn't Jack Welch, it was somebody else, but I'm pretty sure it is. I also did look up, Kevin, very quickly because people are going to say you can't promote the 4 E's and not say what the E's are. The 4 E's of leadership. Number one is energy. And so it's, do I bring
Mhm.
energy as a manager to my team all day, every day? The next is energize. Right. And that's the ability to get other people revved up. Do people want to work for me? The third one is edge, and that's having the courage to make the tough yes or no decisions. And that's what Jack Welch says, do I know when to make the gut call? And the last one is execute, right? Do you continually drive results personally and for your team, right? You can't just be some rah leader. You've actually got to have tangible results. So for anybody wondering, those were the 4 E's of leadership with Jack Welch. So I'm curious, you talked about those early days outside of being by yourself, right? Talk about how you're different today as a leader compared to when you had your first professional leadership role. How have you matured? How have you changed? What stayed the same? Can you paint that picture, that contrast, and some of that personal journey?
I think in the beginning I was hungry. I mean, I think and I think everybody makes this mistake, that the power goes to your head when you lead people. In the earlys, it really gets to you that I'm the boss. You got to listen to me, um, and I don't care what you think. But I think now, if I look at the guy I was then, I was extremely stressed because I mean I got results, but because I did most of the things myself, I was very transactional. But now I can say I'm much more relaxed. Um, I've mastered that emotional intelligence in the sense that I can sit back and I can redirect. I can steer the ship when I need to steer the ship. And, sitting now and, being able to have that free time, it's a luxury. Um, and I was able to pick up golf. I always wanted to golf. I picked up golf. So, I always used to say, where do people get time to play golf? But now I can say I can have that time to play golf and go out there and relax. And I'm still working if I'm playing golf because something can just come into your head and say, yeah, I got to do that, and make a note.
So talk about, there's a lot of VARs that are under stress today. And I can say when I talk with a lot of vendors, they're always worried about resellers. So for you to say, I'm relaxed. I guess can you talk about that? Like what does that mean in terms of, is it relaxed because you have the team in place? Is it relaxed because of your experience or customer relationships? Is it relaxed because of maturity? I mean, how can you be relaxed when you have a lot of other people around you who are like nervous?
I think it's along the lines of this. You kind of position and where you need to go. People talk about a business plan, but it's more about your operating plan. What do you want to do this year? What do you want to do next year? And not try to have being all over the place. So I want to execute this plan one, in this year, it's going to take 6 months. What revenues I'm going to get out of that based on that plan, then that's what it is. And is it operating revenue we can be okay with? Then fine. And then we have to have those difficult discussions sometimes with customers to say, you're not ready for this. We're not ready for this. Let's do this in 8 months. Let's concentrate on this now. That's going to give you this significant amount of revenue. That's going to position your business much better. And I think when I say relaxed, because you cannot make a very good decision if you're stressed out. You got to get that. You got to calm down. It's like anything. It's like the other day I was driving, right? I was driving my son to school and somebody cut me off. Now, at first, I got pissed and then I said, what's the point? But when I drove into my son's school, I saw the car and the person was in the car and the person was crying. And I was saying, wow, something's going on there, And that's what I'm trying. My point is that sometimes we realize that something happens and we get pissed off and ready but if we sit back and relax and say, why did that happen? Why did they do that? Why do we need to do this instead? I think that's where the energy comes from, really sitting back and making a decision from a relaxed perspective rather from a stressed out or some emotional anger or whatever the case is.
I see. If you stay centered emotionally, don't get too high, don't get too low, then you can make appropriate decision. But nobody got frustrated or panicked and was like, and then everything started falling into place. That's when things go sideways, if I'm understanding correctly.
Yeah, correct. You're exactly right. And you say like sometimes you get irritated, but what are you going to do with that irritation? It's just let it pass and say, all right, okay, now we need to do this because you're in a much more relaxed and settled state, centered, as you say.
Excellent. Well, I have one more question for you, but I also have a clarification. I did look up the quote that we were referencing. It was Jack Welch, and here's the exact quote. If the rate of change on the outside exceeds the rate of change on the inside, the end is near. So
that's absolutely correct.
It is true. It's like so scary too. The end is near. Like it's not, you can do better. It's like, it's over. Like once you get behind, it's the end is near for you. So, well, the end is near for our podcast interview. But I'm curious, my final question for you is, we just had a group meeting of a bunch of reseller members, and they talked about how they plan for RetailNOW, how they spend their time at RetailNOW. I'm hoping, can you talk specifically about that show? We talked in general when you go to events, what you look for. But what are you hoping to take away from the expo hall, the education sessions, the networking event? Is there something specific you're looking for, or are you just throwing yourself out there and seeing what, serendipity, where that leads you?
No, I am, as I said, networking opportunities is the biggest for me. I mean, whatever it's available, I kind of align with that. Meeting vendors, meeting old friends. I mean, even around that, this is a big, RetailNOW is the biggest show where, 4 people that I actually have good relationship with, we meet and we kind of use the day before to do something together. I mean, this year we're probably going to try golf, but it's probably too hot in Las Vegas at that point in time, but we'll see.
You might want to only play 9 holes golfing in Vegas in July, but.
And I think I kind of look out for some educational sessions that interest me. Along with any vendor events, some of the vendors host some events that we get to, network as well and see what they're coming up with for the next year. They use it as a platform for their like a small dealer conference show or VAR show. And any friends that like you that we can meet up and have a quick discussion about what's happening in the industry. It's all important. But it's not just wiki-wash. It's really structured in terms of what you want to do. I look at the agenda, what I'm going to do, what I'm going to look at, which booths I want to visit, things along that line.
Fabulous. And if folks want more information on how to navigate retail now from a reseller perspective, we actually did post on the RSPA blog during the month of May. So if you just go onto the RSPA blog, or you can just email me if you want, message me. We have what a lot of resellers are doing, and the successful ones are doing what Kevin is doing, right? You make your plan, but you have a loose plan that you make sure who you want to visit, what technologies you need to look at, what sessions you want to attend, but you leave some open time. I guess that is important for you as well. You don't overschedule yourself, so
No,
you
no.
have just some serendipity to bump into people.
Yeah, I have some open time because at the end of the day, if it's like in business. I mean, I don't load up my day with meetings. I mean, I would have 2 or 3 meetings, sometimes two, that I have enough time to be that advisor. If somebody needs me, they know I'm free, you know. Um, and that's it. I just have 2 meetings today and I'm good for the day.
Excellent. I try to do that, but with the holiday and all that, I have 9 meetings today. So
Wow.
this is the fifth, and that's why I'm like, you can't do that every day,
No,
right?
you
Like you might
can't. You
feel
can't.
busy, and you might be like, boy, I really put in, but you cannot do that every day.
You won't get anything done if you have 9 meetings every day, you know.
Excellent. As we're talking, the mail just got slid under the door here, so there's more incoming to do. Well, excellent. Well, that does it for this episode of The Trusted Advisor. If you enjoyed our discussion, be sure to subscribe to the RSP YouTube channel and the Trusted Advisor podcast so you never miss an episode. And be sure to register for Retail Now 2024. Again, that's July 20th through 30th in Las Vegas, featuring plenty of networking opportunities and several great education sessions, including dynamic leadership, igniting growth, navigating change, and empowering teams. Before we go, big thanks again to Kevin Spencer for sharing his wisdom with us today. Thanks also to RSP Marketing Director Chris Arnold for his production work, Joseph McDade for our music, and last but not least, thanks so much to you for listening. Our goal at the RSPA is to accelerate the success of our members in the retail technology ecosystem by providing knowledge and connections. For more information, visit our website at gorspa.org. Thanks for listening, and goodbye, everybody.
Bye.